You may be wondering,
Well, you're supposed to be wondering, but
how can I display that same love for the people that I meet? See, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a little bit more help to see how we can show love for people and make disciples? See, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a publication that would help us to be more flexible and more responsive to the different needs and interests of the people that we meet? And what if that publication highlighted specific ways that Jesus and other first century evangelizers showed their love as they made disciples? Well, you will be happy to know
that Jehovah's Organization
has produced just such a publication. It's a 32-page brochure entitled Love People, Make Disciples.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Jake, and today we are here to talk about, you guessed, a new publication from Jehovah's Witnesses. Of course, the annual meeting, which was leaked. At that annual meeting, which most Jehovah's Witnesses haven't even seen yet, they announced a new publication, and of course that new publication has now also leaked. So we're here now, gathered and bowed and cringe to be able to look through this publication together. Gonna be honest, me and Christina partied like proper worldly people yesterday. Hung out with some friends, had maybe too many edibles, maybe still feeling the effects a little bit. Incredibly tired. I'm on cup 3 of coffee this morning. So this will be an interesting vibe. Oh, very nice. Animal Crossing is absolutely the energy we need. We have so many people in the chat. Hello to everybody here. I did want to, before we get into the main attraction, our feature presentation, it's always good to check on what rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses are up to. And today they are covering a watchtower that is truly ridiculous. And I remembered that Christina and I actually went through this watchtower in a detail in a previous stream. So the link to that is in the description if you want to go back and relive the glory of us detailing that. But this is the watchtower today. Carry what you must and throw off the rest. And I don't know, like, we did go through it. It's pretty ridiculous, but I just, like, looking at this morning, it's kind of an amazing little case study in the end result of becoming a Jehovah's Witness. You know, we're going to be looking at this book, which is for Jehovah's Witnesses to convert people to the religion. And this watchtower is the extreme. Like, this is where you're going to inevitably end up. So, like, this paragraph 4, because sometimes people ask, like, how do people even get wrapped up with Jehovah's Witnesses? Like, how could anybody fall for this? And the answer is you don't start with this stuff, but this is where it ends up. Our dedication vow. When we I'll start over. When we dedicated ourselves to Jehovah, we vowed to worship him and to do his will. We must keep that vow. Living up to our dedication is a heavy responsibility, but it is not a burden. After all, Jehovah created us to do his will. He will put within us a spiritual need and created us in his image. As a result, we are able to draw close to him and do find delight. and to find delight in doing his will. What is more, when we do God's will and follow his son, we find refreshment for ourselves. So throughout this thing, the family obligation section, because this is about casting off unnecessary loads, mind you, which they have my attention right away. Talking about loads. It says, in our race for life, we must love Jehovah and Jesus more than we love our relatives. This, as they are constantly trying to portray to the press, that they don't shun, that normal family relations continue. So you just got that in there. accountability for our decisions. Jehovah, Jesus, do not shield us from the results of our bad decisions. Some things are just your fault, you know? How can you carry the load? Well, you can't undo a poor decision, and you also can't take responsibility for other people's decisions. So, this paragraph 12, one thing that you must throw off is feeling responsible for the poor decisions that others make. We cannot make decisions for others, nor can we always shield them from the consequences of the bad choices they make. For example, a son or a daughter may eventually decide to stop serving Jehovah. That decision can cause untold grief to the parents. However, parents who blame themselves for their children's poor decisions take on a heavy burden. It is not a weight that Jehovah expects them to bear. So, like, so quickly throughout just a few paragraphs, they go from you must love God, who is co-equal with the organization, mind you, more than you love your actual family. One of your family obligations is shunning any family who leaves Jehovah. And if somebody leaves the organization, it is not the fault of the organization. Doesn't speak to the cult-like nature of the organization. No. This is just you trying to take on responsibility for their decisions. You're the one experiencing grief. You know, their decision to leave doesn't cause them any grief, obviously. Anyway, so that's I don't know. It's always worth keeping track of what the rank and file are up to. And that's that bullshit. So anyway, an unbelieving child, Simply Lore says, is a weight that you must throw off. I mean, this is where you end up. This is how cold and unfeeling and, yes, dehumanized non-believers are. Yeah, it's not a burden. If it feels like a burden, that's a you problem. Stop viewing this as a burden. You're objectively wrong about that, of course. Just got a text, my prescription's ready, so pretty exciting morning for me. Anyway, so at the annual meeting, they released this video presentation talking about the pamphlet, this pamphlet they released. As you will see, there's not a ton of like words upon these pages. So I thought we could start with that, watching this, because I think when I did my reaction to the annual meeting, which I've also linked in the description if you want to see the full context of all this, I think we kind of skipped through this part because this was, in hour 3 of the annual meeting. So let's watch this little bit of propaganda. This is how they are selling this publication to the members.
Publication, Love People, Make Disciples, is being made available in both print and digital formats in over 400 languages.
Some pretty high-tech stuff.
How is the brochure designed to help us show love for people we meet?
By the way, shout out to my friend Danny, XJW Caleb. He did a great stream yesterday on his channel, which was reacting to an organizational video that they made in the 90s detailing how Bethel works and the difference in how the organization is portrayed now to its members versus how it's portrayed then when I was a kid is so interesting. If you want an interesting companion piece to this, check out Danny's stream after this.
Unlike the tools we've used in the past, this new brochure does not give us expressions to memorize, nor does it put the emphasis on leaving literature.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to talk about this because I feel confident that they are presenting reheated light as new light. Like, I feel that they have made this distinction in the past. Like, okay, we're going to move away from memorizing publications. Like, did they not do this during the annual meeting where they announced that they're only going to be publishing 6 magazines a year? Like, wasn't that like there was this huge shift towards we're going to be using the Bible more and we're going to have this teaching toolbox, and now our presentations are going to be these demos that just give suggestions of how to do things but not memorize presentations. Like, they're making it seem like this is some radical new shift, but it seems like they've done this before. So I'm searching, okay, memorize presentation. Well, shit. I think I might have spelled some words wrong. I was trying to look on the online library to see if I could find anything. Yeah, okay. Check this shit out, everybody. I thought this was going to be just from a couple years ago. This is from a KM from 1996. How to prepare for the preaching work. We should select a presentation that we feel comfortable with, perhaps from among those suggested in the reasoning book or those found on the last page of Kingdom Ministry. Give careful thought to the scripture you plan to use, determining what words or phrase you are going to emphasize to make your main point stand out. There is no need to memorize the presentation. Rather, it is best to get the idea in mind, put it in your own words, and express it in a manner that you think will appeal to your listener. Like, they've been saying this for decades. I don't understand why they're saying this like it's some radical shift. It's some radical
Rather,
shit.
it features 12 lessons that focus on qualities we need to cultivate to make disciples. All the lessons are based on Bible accounts in which Jesus or another first-century evangelizer displayed a specific quality in the ministry. The lessons will help us see how we can imitate the qualities they demonstrated as we make disciples. Each lesson contains a video that brings the account to life.
Shout out to commenter Wolf in Cheap Clothing. Hey, Jake and everyone in chat, just wanted to say thanks for everything you're doing. 5 years ago, I was a pioneer ministerial servant, I think is the MS, being considered to become an elder. Now I'm in med school, so I can one day actually help people for real and not just offer false hope. Have an amazing worldly partner and working on getting my real life together. Couldn't have done it without you all. That's fucking awesome. Congratulations, Wolf in Cheap Clothing. That's awesome. It's so satisfying when people, like that desire to help people and to save people doesn't go away when you leave the organization. It just compounds even more because I don't know about you, but I feel like a weird amount of guilt over spreading just nonsense for years and years of my life, giving false hope to people. Thankfully, nobody took the bait because it wasn't true. But that's really great. And I'm glad that you were able to channel that into something genuinely healthy that we need. And it's going to make you a better doctor. Imagine if you have to deal with JW patients or ex-JW patients. You can transfuse all the blood you want, like a true heretic.
A woman of Samaria came to draw water.
I do remember this. He kind of gives her the, duck face, I don't know, bathroom selfie dude face. Like, give me a drink.
Give me a drink.
I don't like this. Jesus was
By
like
cultivating
an
interest in people, we can talk about things that are on their minds. What truths might we share?
The idea that they paint this like Jesus was some absolute genius of persuasion by being like, hey, can I have a drink of water since we're sitting at this well? But like the way Watchtower extrapolates this, as we'll see when we look at the book, they squeeze a lot from this particular part of the Bible. They're like, Jesus was informal witnessing. He saw somebody at a well and using the power of deduction, picked water as his conversation started. It's like, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. What if he was just legit thirsty? I don't know. They make it seem like everything was some model of preaching, which I think when you have deconstructed, it just reveals how thin and wobbly all of their beliefs are. Like, it's so hard to genuinely read the Bible and think that what Jesus was doing in that moment was supposed to be in any way a model for modern people to try and start impromptu conversations that can segue into God's kingdom. Like, they don't have a lot to go off of. So they're just taking what few Bible examples there are of preaching like this and trying to instill all this weight to it.
With people once a conversation is started.
More like Genius Christ.
Appendix A highlights basic Bible truths that we'd love to teach. Make it your goal to learn these basic truths and the scriptures that support them. If you do, you will be more effective in starting conversations and in making disciples. For example, a conversation can be started by asking a simple question, such as,
So like the whole framework for this brochure is bullshit. The brochure is called Love People, Make Disciples. Those two things, I would argue, are almost mutually exclusive. Like, you absolutely cannot genuinely love people just for existing on this world. We're just all floating around in this big blue marble and we just love people. You can't express love for somebody if you have an ulterior motive and your only reason for talking with them is to slowly convert them to your religion. That's not showing love for people. Actual selflessness, actual good Samaritan best practice would be you just be a good person. Help people no matter what their religion is. Perhaps especially if they don't already agree with you. Don't expect anything in return. But that's not what this book is. This book is like trick people into thinking that you genuinely care about them by starting a bunch of conversations with ulterior motives.
have you heard that God will soon end all suffering? Or, did you know that the earth's
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is that's like a dog whistle. The fact that that person was in a wheelchair, these are the real comments that witnesses give at the meeting. It's like, well, we see that this person's disabled, so we can talk about the hope for the kingdom. Like, that's what they would do with the Bible teach book back in my day, kids, when that was the hot new sauce. I don't know, I don't know if that's an expression. But that, like, the opening pages were like a blind person taking their sunglasses off, a person who like maybe had difficulty walking, like throwing their cane into the sea, dead loved ones coming back to life, and just trying to self-select for people who were hurting and might be emotionally vulnerable to these tactics. And of course, the way you feel when you're a witness is that you are offering them the only true hope that really exists. Like, no, you can't just make healthcare more accessible to people. The only universal healthcare is universal sovereignty, folks. So that's what they're doing here. How can you trick a bunch of people, maybe even ones, perhaps especially people who are emotionally vulnerable?
environment will be restored. Sharing a simple truth at the right time is powerful. Jesus said his sheep would listen to his voice.
They say this very casually, but I think it's important to remember that it is still canon. It is still Jehovah's Witness doctrine that somebody who rejects the teaching in the ministry is somebody who is not listening to the voice of Jesus. Like, they are not rightly disposed for everlasting life. There is just something, I don't know, like spiritually, ontologically wrong with them. And so they can't. It's not that you're preaching wrong, although you may be, so work on your preaching skills, but it's that they are not rightly disposed for everlasting life. So you're going to meet people in the ministry that just can't handle the deep brain, powerful ideas you're presenting.
In other words, rightly disposed ones will recognize the truth when they hear it expressed simply. Appendix B helps us to determine whether to continue a conversation. Appendix C,
very critically for Jehovah's Witnesses, not the greatest of all times. In fact, it's like great tribulationists of all time. Was that funny? I don't know. Like I said, third cup of coffee.
Provides practical suggestions on how to conduct Bible studies and enjoy life forever. What if you don't feel comfortable starting conversations? Don't worry. Beginning in January 2024, the Apply Yourself portion of each midweek meeting will help us to practice the points we are learning in this new brochure. The meeting will no longer focus on presenting a predetermined topic in Scripture. Rather, students will select topics for their assignments that they know are.
Sorry, just had to blow my nose. Thought I would spare everybody that. Hey, Miss, oh no, and she told me how to pronounce this too, Miss Sato. This she writes for Avoid JW. That's the name associated with the article that we're going to be looking at that leaks all this information. So shout out to that. This is such a crazy screen, though. Like, I think sometimes it can be hard to articulate to people how Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult or how weird they are, because they do have a vaguely pedestrian look about them. You know, they're not like Mormons where they wear special secret underwear, and they're not Scientology where they hook people up to weird sci-fi machines. But what they are is an extremely corporate cult, like a cult dressed in the trappings of like corporate America. But this whole thing, like, pretends to be people's friend, the pamphlet, with sections like starting a conversation, how to trick people into thinking that you're their friend, and just having breakdowns of how to have conversations with people. Yeah, it is like MLM logic. This is a good question. Will they take the MLM route and be sliding into DMs as well? Hey girl, haven't talked to you since you were in disfellowship. But I have exciting news. There's a new business opportunity. I mean, publication for you. Yeah, end the conversation on a positive note. When you realize that the person does not want to talk. I like that. When you realize that the person does not want to talk, they don't want to, no matter what. So whenever you realize that, just end on a high note.
On the minds of those in their community. By means of realistic demonstrations,
yeah,
audience discussion.
Anybody who's been a witness can attest to how realistic these demonstrations are. They're like little documentaries. They're so true to life.
And talks, our meetings will assist us to develop skills that will help us start conversations naturally and adapt to each person's concerns and needs.
Start conversations naturally. That's not a thing. Like, there's no actual natural way to start a conversation with somebody. Like, if your main hope is to convert them, because that's not natural. Like, you can only try and appear natural. You can only act natural, fly casually. That's all you can do. But the actual thing they're doing just isn't natural, and it's not sincere. That's not how you become friends with people or make good connections in your life. It's fundamentally artificial. And I don't know about you, but I think that more people who aren't witnesses should see this, because I would feel really betrayed if I thought I had just made a friend and all they wanted to do was to convert me to their religion. Like, everything that they were saying, from the nice way they approached me in the supermarket or the doctor's waiting room, to getting my number and sitting and having a spiritual conversation around a cup of coffee, like that, all of that stuff was dictated by this weird internal brochure called Love People, Make Disciples. That would feel like a weird, invasive betrayal of my trust, I think. Now, of course, that's kind of the weird tightrope they have to walk, because by the time somebody, a prospective witness, knows about this publication, in order for them to not feel betrayed by it, they would have to really buy into the idea that making disciples is the most important work taking place on earth today. So you would have to be able to be like, no, I totally understand why you informal witnessed to me, because you were saving my life. Yeah, and that's the other thing now, is like, it's not actually about counting time, but it is about, like, the culture around preaching is the most important thing and making disciples is the most important thing. Like, that hasn't changed at all. The only thing that's changed is the manner in which you, like, show your participation in it. But I think a lot of the new light is a lot of goalpost shifting and a lot of just taking things from the past and reinstituting them as if they're new, but a lot of it's not new. A lot of it doesn't really change the issues with the group. Yeah, any friendship contingent on religious alignment is not a friendship. Really good stuff from Chad. Chad popping off as usual.
By focusing on people, we will become more comfortable and more effective as we make disciples. As you consider each lesson, think carefully about how you can demonstrate the highlighted qualities when conversing with people in your community.
This is actually not a bad idea, right? Like, if you, oh, you want to be my friend? Okay, come to a party. Well, now they don't count in their minds about how much they please God that day. Well, that's true. That's true. It is more like hashtag effort for them now. Like, hey, I tried. I talked to that person at the Home Depot and tried to informal witness to them. That was enough for Jehovah. I don't know. It's a very sad life.
Ask yourself, what are their concerns and needs? As you go about your activities, be observant. Look for appropriate opportunities to help people in practical ways.
You know, like a con artist, look for ways that you can exploit normal people's everyday circumstances to insert yourself with the ulterior motive of making them a Jehovah's Witness. Just look at every bank as a potential robbery.
Acts of kindness can open the door to share kingdom truth. Show that you care by listening to others when they express themselves. Share a simple truth at the right time.
But we all know what the right time is. The right time is like when somebody dies in their family, or when they're undergoing economic hardship, or they are experiencing marital strife, like, or maybe they just moved and they're feeling lonely. These are all the times in people's lives when they are most susceptible to high control groups. And witnesses weirdly know that, even though they don't know that it has worked on them in the past. Or I guess if they do know, they just think like, oh, well, thank God a Jehovah's Witness found me at the right time. Yeah, skeptics and scoundrels look for vulnerabilities and exploit them. It truly is.
Remember, our goal is not to memorize a presentation, but to demonstrate Christ-like love to everyone we meet. This will require patience.
Let's naturally share at the right time while not
perseverance.
Thinking too much about it. Like, it's so... It is like creating even more cognitive dissonance for Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, constantly be thinking of ways to engage in conversations naturally, even though we are asking you to do a fundamentally unnatural thing. Like, wouldn't that just drive you crazy? Jenny Bloom, people today are so aware of the fake conversations too. They expect a sales pitch. The only ones who get taken in by this are usually very vulnerable, which makes it worse. It's so true. Like, anybody who knocks at my door now, I'm like, okay, what are you selling? What are you trying to get me to sign up for? Whatever. And like, there's just so much more awareness about scams and MLMs. And even though I wish there was more coverage of Jehovah's Witnesses proper, like, the increased awareness of cults is just generally good for society, because I think it's put more people on guard against, like, oh, a lot of people are just trying to take you for a ride and get you to like sign up for something. Yeah, how long before Jehovah's Witnesses are just like Bitcoin bots in people's DMs? JWs should do community service like Mormons do. I mean, yes, they think that they just are literally doing community service by informal witnessing. Like, that's just what they think they're doing. Being at a restaurant and giving the waiter a tract, which I think is what's happening here, is like, that's good. That's you doing community service. That's the same as picking up trash.
And commitment. No matter where we live or under what circumstances we are preaching, simply showing
that
love
wheelchair
will
guy
help
was
us
really
to
getting
find
a
joy
shout out
in
in
our
this video.
ministry.
He was like the main character.
More than any specific technique, actively expressing our love for others will help us make disciples.
Actively expressing our love for others. But it is a technique. He said more than any other technique, as if to say, you know, don't sweat the technique. Don't This isn't a tech, but it is a technique. Constantly just signaling a loving attitude when in reality it's all on the basis of getting people to join is fucked. I don't like that. Yeah, good point. There are a lot of posts like that on city subreddits. People are not super vibing with cults coming around their doors. I think they've got an uphill battle, these Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, so let's look at this actual publication. It's pretty wild. It is 32 pages. I mistakenly thought that they announced it as a new book. It is not, but it's also, I guess, it's sort of replacing the reasoning book in the sense that this is the main tool that witnesses are going to be using internally to hone their preaching and teaching skills. So this is not something that is meant to be placed with other people. This is something just for Jehovah's Witnesses, which is interesting. So it is like kind of like an MLM internal manual as to how to get people to sign up and sell LuLaRoe products or whatever. So this letter from the governing body is super cringe. I really love it. We love it. We love to see it. And let's just dive right into this. A letter from the governing body. Dear brothers and sisters, and do sound off about voices I should be using throughout this because we'll be doing a lot of reading. Well, not a lot of reading. I mean, this is not a ton of text. This looks like when you have a book report due in like 7th grade and you put it off to the last minute and you're like, well, if I make the size of the font like 17 and quadruple space it, it'll technically take up 2 pages. Anyway, a letter from the governing body. Dear brothers and sisters, love for God and for people motivates us to go and make disciples of people of all the nations, baptizing them. Unselfish love is powerful. It can touch the hearts of those who are rightly disposed for everlasting life. So, dog whistle. They're not going to explain what this means because everybody knows what it means. But the answer, to put it in writing, would make them look really culty and bad. Because people rightly disposed for everlasting life, as we discussed earlier, means that some people just aren't rightly disposed for everlasting life. Some people deserve to live. Some people deserve to die. Moving on. In the past, we focused on memorizing presentations and on leaving literature. Now, recall, in 1996, they were saying literally this exact same thing. So it's not that this is a lie. It's just that this also isn't new necessarily. Now we need to work on improving our conversation skills. We want to show love for others by talking about subjects that interest them. That means being flexible and carefully considering each person's concerns and interests. How will this brochure help us do that? So I mean, think about this. None of this is loving. Like, okay, show love for others by talking about subjects that interest them. Well, that would be a nice thing to do. It's nice as a person to be flexible and carefully considering what each person is concerned about and interested. But they're not just saying this generally. They're not saying like just generally do this to be a good person. They're saying do this so that people will join the religion. All right, people are saying Malenfant. I'm pretty snotty this morning, so I should be able to get my voice pretty deep. The brochure has 12 lessons featuring qualities that we need to cultivate in order to show love and make disciples. Each lesson is based on a Bible account in which Jesus or another first-century evangelizer displayed a specific quality in the ministry. I don't know if that's Malenfant. I might just be doing generic deep voice. Anyway, whoever this guy is, he's reading the rest of this paragraph. The goal is not to memorize presentations, but to look for ways to demonstrate our love for people. Although each quality is needed for all aspects of our ministry, we will consider how certain qualities are especially needed when starting conversations, making return visits, or conducting Bible studies. Ay, papi. Okay, good. Are we serving Malenfant? Are we serving Malenfant this morning? Okay. As you consider each lesson here, now I'm going to do my favorite impression that nobody cares about because nobody knows what Chris Martin from Coldplay sounds like, but I promise you he sounds like this.
As you consider each lesson, think carefully about how you can demonstrate the quality when speaking to people in your community. Strive to deepen your love for Jehovah and for people. That love, more than any specific technique, will help you to reach your goal of making disciples.
We appreciate the great privilege to work shoulder to shoulder with you. Yes, the governing body is known for preaching shoulder to shoulder with their disciples. Okay, anyway, so that's the bullshit opening. I just love it. I love the whole framework is like, here's how you can pretend to be a person. Here's how you can almost like be a spy. Be no part of the world, but act like you are so that you can have natural adjacent conversations with people. Hey, thank you. Apparently 3 people do know who Chris Martin is and thought that was good. Okay. So as we established earlier, they think Jesus at the well is like the fucking apex, the predator. I don't know. I was trying to think of a fancy word. They just think it's good. They think it's good, and it describes preaching. So I like this. I like this as chapter 1 in their How to Be a Normal Person manual. Starting a conversation. Imitate Jesus. Be flexible. Do not insist on starting a conversation on a topic you had in mind. Start with something that others are thinking about. Ask yourself, what is in the news? What are my neighbors, coworkers, or classmates talking about? And the basis of this is they show that cringy video with Jesus we watched. Jesus trying to be like a TikTok boy, getting all the clicks, kind of doing like a pouty blue steel face, and then making this galaxy brain deduction that he was so smart for noticing the only 2 things in his immediate periphery, which were a woman and a well. And he did this crazy fucking beautiful mind equation in his head where he's like, well, wait a minute. I want to make disciples. So if I talk to this lady about water in this well, she might become Jehovah's friend, like my future friends, Caleb and Sophia. So they're getting a lot out of this, a lot of mileage out of Jesus at the well. But this is all really creepy, right? Like, be observant. Ask yourself, what is the person currently doing? What might he be thinking about? What do the person's clothing, appearance, or home tell me about his beliefs or culture? Is this a good time to talk to the person? This isn't how you should be going about social interactions. Like, I'm not the most socially apt person, but this does strike me as riskless energy, TBH. The Stephen Fry voice, I would have to check in with Stephen Fry. I know that he's got a deep British voice. Jesus Christ. It's just like being sneaky. We do talk sometimes on this channel about how God is a sneaky boy, but this is what I'm thinking. In the Midwest, it's rude not to make small talk everywhere you go, and it's my personal. I hate this. It probably would surprise people watching this stream to know that I'm relatively quiet at work. I don't like. I keep to myself as much as possible. I really don't like small talk. I don't feel comfortable in that environment, but it really is a thing. Like, people try and make small talk all the time. So at least in my territory, it should be pretty easy for them to pretend to be normal and have conversations on unsuspecting victims, future cult victims. Naturalness. And this is good. This is part 2 of how to pretend to be a normal person for ulterior motives. Naturalness. Principle. A word spoken at the right time, how good it is. I did not like these scriptures when I was a witness. Anything that sounded kind of had these like old-timey sentence structures. The old-timey leadership would always read it with such relish. Like Sam Hurd would be like, a word spoken at the right time, how good it is. And you'd really get the sense that he thought it was really good in kind of a creepy way. But this is the principle of how you should be natural when you're pretending to be a real person. And should we watch this video? Philip preaches to the Ethiopian eunuch. I don't know. How do we feel about watching these videos? We should watch a couple of them to see what we're into. Moira Rose. I got to figure out who that even is. Yeah. Just like to make somebody into a different thing. I make disciples. Maybe try making cool miniatures so that I can watch your YouTube videos about how you make them. Okay, I'm going to try and see if this video is on the website yet. I'm just going to search for eunuch. It's usually pretty high up in my recently searched list. They spell it weird, don't they? Or maybe I just spelled it wrong. It's hard to believe that could be possible. Is this video Philip the Evangelizer? Philip preaches to the Ethiopian. I guess I don't know if this is the right one, but we're gonna watch it. It's got to be at least adjacent to what we're doing. Okay, here's jw.org. I mean, this looks like the video that they're talking about. Oh, it's 7 minutes. Good God. I'll bet this is like I bet there's a link to a shorter, more abbreviated one for this chapter. But I don't know. These Bible dramas are so good. Let's check it out. Oh, wow. Immediately thinking, I don't know. Get me to Philip. That time he talked to the eunuch. They're really laying a lot of track to just get to a simple flashback with Philip. My God. Okay.
Philip was one of 7 brothers selected to distribute food to Christian widows in Jerusalem.
7 brothers. Oh, Moira. Oh, my God. I'm an idiot. Yes.
That was an important assignment. He did so much more than that.
Again, calling, the disciples doing assignments the way modern Jehovah's Witnesses talk about them, like inserting witness language into the Bible. Dad, why do you make us read about eunuchs so much? Good God. Is this motherfucker ever going to preach to the Ethiopian eunuch? Let's get to the point. Oh, yeah. See, this is why I wanted to watch it, because look at the Ethiopian eunuch. They don't show the eunuch situation down here, but you get the sense this is a good-looking guy.
And preach in other cities.
But that didn't stop him from showing hospitality when Paul and his companions came to visit.
True, by the way. Talking about like, oh, we're not doing techniques anymore. But here's a
Visits
list.
like that must have been full of
Techniques.
spiritual lessons for his daughters.
It must have been. It simply must have been the case. By the way, I got into making that stupid supercut video because I was going to make a weasel word supercut of the annual meeting. I was going to go through and kind of almost make a wannabe companion piece to Software NPC's really good video on weasel words that the organization uses. The way that they will say, like, evidently this was the case. It must have been. It is reasonable to assume. And they do it a lot in the annual meeting as they're building a pretty flimsy case for their new light. So I was going to do that. And frankly, it just wasn't all that much fun to watch. And I didn't know why. I started to think, I don't know if I am enjoying making this, if it would be enjoyable for other people to watch. So I just made silly memes instead.
That night, we came up with a few things we wanted to do.
Okay, well, this video sucked. It didn't teach us anything. And we didn't get to see any, balls or anything that I was hoping to see. But let's get back into Let's get back to our guidelines of how to be a normal person. Kindness. A how-to guide. How does one be kind? I don't know. Good thing I have this book. Principle. Love is kind. Kind of using the word to define the word. So I don't know how helpful that's going to be. Jesus heals a blind man. That seems like a bit of kindness that would be hard for a witness to emulate. Like, it is kind to heal people of their physical ailments, but we're not able to do that. So imitate Jesus. Empathize with the person. What if the person is gay? What if the person is trans? What if the person is an atheist? Or was a victim or survivor of spiritual abuse or trauma? What if the person was was in Scientology? Are you allowed to empathize with the person still? Are you allowed to be paying attention to what's in the news, by the way, if what's in the news, like if you're in Pennsylvania, for instance, one of the things that might be in the news is this ongoing investigation into your own religion. And that might be on people's minds. Are they supposed to start conversations about that? I don't know. I think sometimes their vagueness comes back to bite them. Hot take. Empathize with the person. Try to imagine how he feels. It will be a guy, first of all. So any women, ignore them. Imagine how he feels. Ask yourself, what may be he concerned with? I did not read that correctly at all. What may he be concerned about? Why is it hard to read? My brain is dying in real time right before your eyes. What might he find helpful and appealing? Doing so will help you to show kindness in a natural and sincere manner. That was the most unnatural description of how to be nice I've ever read. What might he find helpful and appealing? How can I pretend to be appealing? What is this? Yeah, you can be like our previous chatter who left organizations becoming a doctor. This is such a great brochure. This brochure is amazing. I like humility. We talked a couple weeks ago about kind of the faux humility of the group and the way that humility to them is actually like subservience. Like, to be a witness and show humility means to show unquestioning fealty to the group. Like, being humble is the elders discipline you for something you didn't do, but you just swallow your pride and go along with it. So let's see how they justify humility or paint it to others in part 4 of How to Be Normal and Not Trick People. Wink. That's the title. Principle. With humility, consider others superior to you. Now, this is fundamentally at odds with being a Jehovah's Witness, because anybody outside the group is inferior to you. That is just a part of the in-group, out-group mentality. Like, you literally do think you're superior to others. You think you have the truth, and everyone else is consuming a bunch of, at best, satanic misunderstandings, but most likely lies. Ugh. Do not be condescending. Now, you watched that video with Mark Sanderson at the beginning of the stream. I don't know. I think the governing body struggles with lesson 4, imitate Paul. I also think Paul struggled with imitate Paul. I think he was very condescending. I think there's some of the most condescending letters of the Bible. Avoid giving the impression that you know everything and that the other person knows nothing. Speak with him in a respectful way. Okay. Make clear that the Bible is the source of the truths you share. Don't show them this book, by the way. God's word contains thoughts that touch people's hearts. When we use it, we are building their faith on the right foundation. Okay. This leads me into something I just thought of, but I'm bored going through this. And I want to talk about that really crazy video that I show a little bit of in my like cringe compilation. It's the video on the web or in that compilation I made where Sam Hurd is like, call me Sammy. It's a really weird video, but I think it's a great example of how witnesses absolutely view themselves as superior, and especially Gilead grads view themselves as superior. But the last thing that's interesting about this is truths we love to teach. This is a fun thing about being a Jehovah's Witness, is that you're constantly being told what you already love and how much you appreciated that talk, didn't you? Now, more of my favorite kind of language here. Jesus said that honest-hearted people will recognize the truth when they hear it. So there you go. If somebody disagrees with you and doesn't think Jehovah's Witnesses have the truth, it's because their heart is not honest. Their heart is bad. So these truths they love to teach, you will notice that it does not involve Armageddon. It says under God's kingdom will replace human governments. That's a nice way to put it. How are they going to be toppled in the first place? No, they're just replaced. Let's slide in a new administration. They don't talk about shunning. They don't talk about their LGBTQ policies. They don't talk about blood. They don't talk about having to be imprisoned for the group, because you don't love to teach those truths. You don't necessarily love to teach us. These are the truths you love to teach. The really appealing things that can maybe rope in some unsuspecting people foolish enough to think that you were trying to be your friend and showing a genuine interest in them. God damn it. Okay, well, that's that. Pile of trash. That's love people, trick people, make disciples.com. Any day now. This is the talk. When I was editing a video that, I'll say it, kind of bombed. Didn't get a lot of views. Part of it's because got a copyright claim. Hans Zimmer was feeling litigious, apparently. Was trying to say that I didn't transform his work enough. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's just like Sony Music automatically flagged something, but I challenged the copyright flag on that video. But I think because there's a copyright investigation on it, it didn't hit the algorithm as much. But anyway, when I was, I wanted to do this thing where I made it look like Sam Hurd was flashing back, having like a war flashback or something. And I found this really weird talk that I don't know that I'd ever seen before. And maybe you have, but I think that everything he says in this is kind of wild. And we've only been going for 52 minutes. I like to keep these a nice 90-minute stream. And so I think let's jump in here. What else is there to talk? We've talked about the fucking annual meeting, talked about broadcast garbage. We've got some time. Let's go back to the glory days, because he says things very passionately in this talk that contradict the annual meeting. That cringe compilation was already getting too long and less funny as it went along.
You will be going home or to a new assignment.
This is a Gilead graduation. So they're specifically talking to like a graduating class of people who in the MLM structure got to, become people who train the trainers. Like they moved their way up the corporate ladder enough that they're closer to the top of the pyramid. And so this is like the tone of this talk is kind of different than one he would give now. Yeah, it's like not that long ago, I don't think, because he still looks old as shit, but it's long enough ago that he has a level of vim that you just don't see in these new talks, where he's clearly like, they inject him with like whatever they inject Logan with at the end of Succession, like these like adrenaline medicines that just let him fucking make it through the day, and he's just reading off a teleprompter. Anyway, this was pre-adrenaline shot days.
You will be going home or to a new assignment. We want you to know that you will be missed. It was good for the Bethel family to have you with us. It was a blessing from Jehovah. Like a pregnant woman, your bellies are swelled to the limit.
This is where we're starting. Like a pregnant woman, your belly is swelled to the limit with the spiritual babies we impregnated you with at Gilead. There was a section on illustrations, by the way, in Make Friends, Trick People, and Make Disciples and Influence People.
All the signs tell you that a baby is about to be born. You're rushed to see the doctor. He examines you, and you ask, when? He says, any day now.
When?
Born. You're rushed to see the doctor. He examines you, and you ask, when? He says,
when? His imitations of just any other human being are so weird and condescending.
any day now. Your minds and hearts are about to burst with spiritual things to deliver to others. Yes, this is a day.
Your spiritual cervix is dilating. You'll be giving birth to a gigantic Jehovah-sized baby.
For delivering. Your spirituality is contagious. When you walk into a room...
See, we are mixing metaphors. They're pregnant with a fucking spirit baby, but the baby or their pregnancy is contagious somehow, but it's a good kind of contagious.
You bring sunshine with you. Notice what Jesus said to some of his followers.
Notice it.
Matthew 5:14-16. You are the light of the world.
Yeah.
Likewise, sisters are in the house with you. Shine on them, but don't limit it to them. We want others to see the light.
So I find this talk really interesting because he's kind of buttering them up in terms of how spiritual they are. Like, you're shining so bright that your baby is going to just fly out your shining vagina like a sunbeam. It will be like a solar flare from the uterus of I don't know how babies work. He doesn't have a child, right? Like, wasn't it famously the case that Anthony Morris was the only person on the governing body with children? Maybe that's why he thinks that pregnancy is contagious.
For the past 5 months, you have been studying the personality of Jehovah and talking to him by means of prayer. While it's true, humans cannot see the literal person, Jehovah. For Jehovah...
Why, by the way? Why? For any good reason at all? I got some problems with this God guy being constantly invisible. Probably the first time it's ever been said, but, you know, this is a brave stream. We say brave things and take down these, you know, big Jehovah and other sacred cows that other people are too cowardly to talk about. Sorry, like I said, I don't know. I'm very tired.
Of a God to set down a description of himself in spirit terms would be like trying to explain colors to a person born blind. You have been asking for him to help you in your studies, and he has helped you. Without his help, you would not be graduating.
Look at all, he tells them so many things that they already did or did experience or are doing or couldn't have done. There's like no subjective spirituality at all for Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all like, you did this and experienced this and couldn't have done this without this.
Now you're ready, as never before, to let your light shine on your fleshly family members, your Bible students.
We love, by the way, that, and it's normal and not a sign of it being a cult, that the idea of family is so distant and detached from the basic idea of love that you refer to them as your fleshly family.
And your spiritual brothers and sisters. But don't make it so bright and intense that you put out the eyes of those around you.
Okay, so this is where things get interesting. He's saying you Gilead graduates are actually so spiritual that you could essentially explode someone's brain. Like you could turn someone into the galaxy brain meme, but it would almost just explode their heads. Like your light is so bright that it can blind people. That's how amazing you are.
Turn the wick down
Turn the
in
wick.
your lamp.
Turn the wick down on your lamp. Does that sound not like just the exact opposite of what the Bible says? You know, other Christians are like, let your light shine. And Sam Hurd's like, turn that light down. It's a little bright in here. And I had a lot of edibles last night.
That you put out the eyes of those around you. Turn the wick down in your lamp. There's no need to say every time. We were taught this in Gilead. We were taught this in one of our Gilead classes. A member of the governing body called this to our attention in a lecture he gave.
The way that, like, everybody is just an idiot. Every person that he ever conjures for like a hypothetical is always an annoying, sneering moron. Not like me. I don't do that. That's the Sam Hurd thing.
You knew some things before you come to Gilead. You knew God's name is Jehovah and that it is unique, meaning the only one of its kind.
Here you go. Ready?
My name is Sam. Samuel or Sammy. It is not unique. There are many others with the same name. I was named after my father's brother, Uncle Sam. Did you get that? Uncle Sam.
The joke is that Uncle Sam is a guy on a poster.
I did not name myself. A baby doesn't say when 8 months in its mother's womb, Mommy, when I get out, call me Sammy. God Almighty chose his name, Jehovah. He named himself. That is different.
What if this Sam is going to be really struggling with like trans and non-binary people that change their names, or just the idea that people can change their names at any time? Like, actually, plenty of people change their names. In fact, people change their names after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. I've thought about it. I've thought about legally changing my last name. Like, but they pride themselves on illustrations and come up with preposterous illustrations that you can immediately poke holes in. And then when you point out the flaws in it, they're like, it's just illustrations. That's what I'm assuming Sam Hurd would say in his snide voice. But now as soon as I found that there was a video called like Any Day Now, and it had a quote of Sam Hurd saying, Mommy, call me Sammy. I mean, that was one of the great moments in my YouTube career, was finding that. I popped open a bottle of champagne.
That is unique. You Gilead students, soon to be Gilead graduates, know Jehovah, but not
truly, by the way. I mean, a diploma that is not doing you a lot of good. The Gilead graduation. I mean, that's not, you can't really put it on a resume. If for some reason the branch or the organization decided arbitrarily one day to reassign you, as they often do, you would just be fucked in your education. If you had to get a job, this would just do you absolutely no good. Yeah, the organization really sets people up for success.
completely. Not the whole person, just the fringe. Compare what you see to an ornamental edging of hanging threads of a garment. You don't see the whole garment. Romans 11:33-36 says, oh, the depth of God's riches and wisdom and knowledge. His advice
Boring.
endures forever. Forever? That is an interesting word.
This talk, it takes some interesting directions.
It is defined as never ending. incessantly, ceaseless. That's enough to blow an imperfect man's mind away, but not Jehovah's mind. And he promises obedient humans everlasting, never-ending life.
How do they know that it didn't blow Jehovah's mind? I mean, if you presumably were a timeless entity, I mean, wouldn't that be just tripping you out a lot? They just make shit up about Jehovah, and then they're like, Jehovah, he doesn't worry about the price of gas. Jehovah invented his name because it existed for all eternity, and that doesn't blow his mind. Like, well, you don't know any of this.
I'm going to read a scripture to you without revealing where it is found in the Bible.
Turns
It
into
is
the
one
Riddler
of
here
the
briefly.
first that captured my attention back in 1956. Now, that was before any of you were born. With that, I heard a loud voice from the throne say,
Peaches is here,
"Look,
but she's not wanting to be picked up, by the way.
Understand and sort out correctly. Yes, one day we will know much more than we know today, but we will not know it all." That's good.
That's good.
You will never be a know-it-all.
Says
Now
who?
is the time to let your light shine.
But again, not too much.
Our work at the present is to inform people that the kingdom of God, a heavenly government, is the only remedy to the woes of mankind that is causing so much suffering and death.
And death.
Inform people of the kingdom, but don't blind them with your bright light of knowledge learned.
So is this humility? The way Jehovah's Witnesses talk about themselves, you know, behind closed doors? They have a chapter on being humble. But what they're really saying is like, in the book, they're saying, hey, you know, we're not better than anybody. Don't try and act like you're better than anybody. But the talks that the leadership are giving are like, literally, you are better than everybody. And you're so much better that if people could see how much better you were, the light would burn their eyes into puddles, and just dripping pools of your corneas would just go down your face like candle wax. That's what would happen if people saw how spiritual you were. Like, it's the complete opposite of humility.
At Gilead. A little light will be enough for them to see where to go.
Says who?
When I was in the army,
in
Germany years ago.
Oh no.
I drove.
I want to know which side he fought for, by the way. We should check on this.
A truck with 5 men inside, and M1.
And I just want you to know, I did do my due diligence as an editor, because we had a nice UC and 5 men inside. Just, that was all right there, ripe for the taking. And I think the video just felt like it was getting a little long, but you know, these things do go through my head.
1 howitzer artillery gun attached to the rear of the truck. We traveled during a pitch dark night with no lights used.
Oh God.
We could only see the tail light of the vehicle in front.
This is literally true.
That was enough light.
The way, I mean, you know why I love my dog so much is because she's real. I can hold her in my fucking hands. And like, this connection that they describe with Jehovah is so weird. It is unrealistic and probably impossible to get people to have this level, like the level of love and affection that people have for their pets. And maybe this is why the organization has been very anti-pet sometimes in the past. It's like, I don't know. That's what real connection is having a fucking cute fur baby. Being able to hold it in your hands is not. Sometimes I pray to Jehovah about whether or not I should go out in service, and because I'm tired, but then I feel a little bit better and I go, and somebody was nice to me when I knocked on their door. Like, that's a lot harder of a relationship to justify as real. I don't know. I tried to make something deep out of just my puppy being cute. I don't know if we got there.
Keep in mind, there may not be enough time left for your students and new brothers and sisters.
Wait. This is important. And I think I missed him talking about the truck. He was in the truck.
That was enough light.
Yeah, he was saying it was very stupid. He's another stupid illustration that doesn't make any sense, that he just pulled out of his ass and smelled it and was like, you know what, I love the smell of my own butt farts, and so I'm gonna spread this little butt fart around to everybody. But he's just saying when he was in the army, sometimes he'd be in the back of a truck, and if it was night, you could only see the lights of the car ahead of you, and that was enough. And it's like, what are you saying? That you were like, would it not have just been better if there were lights on the side of the road for you to see? Wouldn't it have been better if there just wasn't a fucking war and a God who allowed that war to happen in the first place? Wouldn't that be better?
Of the truck. We traveled during a pitch dark night with no lights used. We could only see the tail light of the vehicle in front. That was enough light to follow. Keep in mind, there may not be enough time left for your students and new brothers and sisters to learn all that you know. Feed them, not a heavy meal of steak and baked potatoes, but an appetizer to stimulate the juices in the mouth.
You see what I'm saying? We had him saying stimulate the juices in the mouth, and I just couldn't, I don't know, I just couldn't figure out how to put that in the supercut. It is crazy, though. This whole talk is probably worthy of its own edit. Again, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, what does he say? Like, the end is so near. And now, of course, this talk is years old, so it wasn't that close. But he's saying that, like, the end is so near that you're not even going to be able to teach your student everything. They're not going to be able to handle the heavy meal. So just give them enough spiritual appetizers to whet their juices. The way they're able to extrapolate spiritual food and insist that it's such a thing in the Bible that you can just go on whole tangents about spiritual appetizers wetting your salivary glands in your spiritual mouth.
Any day now, nations will cause the peoples who are looking to them for guidance to think they have finally established peace. The need for peace is already being talked about by national leaders.
Wow. This is before. Okay, first of all, Dedoy, the need for peace is already being talked about by national leaders. The fucking need for peace has been talked about since the existence of conflict. This isn't new. This isn't a new concept. And it's such a not new concept that they've had to reiterate over and over again over the years that the start of the Great Tribulation isn't just necessarily a political leader saying peace and security, because it happens so much. It's just a normal thing for people to say. So they have to add all these caveats to the Great Tribulation. But what he's going to say here and say so passionately is completely undone by the teachings of the annual meeting, which, you know, Jeffrey Jackson has this whole talk detailing how they can't be dogmatic about when the door to the ark closes. You know, he addresses the elephant in the room, which I think is pretty clearly the lack of Anthony Morris, and how unloving it would be to insist that once the Great Tribulation starts, nobody can join. But that's exactly what Sam Hurd's about to say.
We're not fooled by this sham cry of peace and security. 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says, whenever it is that they are saying peace and security, then sudden destruction is to be instantly on them.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Great. That's false religion. And against Babylon the Great. That's false religion.
Mm-hmm.
After they see the handwriting on the wall for her and destroy her.
Oh, my God.
Sudden destruction. Instantly. It won't take long. Her supporters will cry out weeping and mourning and say, too bad. Too bad. But we will be thinking, I'm glad. I'm glad.
Is this a person who should be in charge of picking up their own prescription medications, let alone millions of people and their mental health decisions? Like, this is fucking crazy. This is not a well person. He's technically quoting the Bible, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't think you can really justify this.
Revelation 18:20 says, be glad over her, O heaven, also you holy ones, and upon destruction.
Yay. He's excited about it.
I think you are. But I can't.
Oh, this is interesting.
Are you behalf?
Are you ready?
Are you ready
for some football?
Are you ready to be glad over her destruction?
Damn.
I think you are. But I can't make that determination.
See, like, this is worth having on the record. It's like, you as a Jehovah's Witness need to get in a mindset where you are glad to see the destruction of everything on planet Earth that doesn't have to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, that's what he's saying. You should be glad over the destruction of people from different religions and people in governmental institutions and courts and, I don't know, just newspapers that they don't like. Like, you should be glad at the destruction of people. You know, this is what makes a very calloused and emotionally fucked up group of people. Like, this is why we have to go to therapy, because this is what we were filling our heads with. And I think most Jehovah's Witnesses really, you know, probably aren't in this mentality of wanting people to be destroyed. I think that's why they changed this kind of stuff for the new convention of like, no, people will be able to join when the Great Tribulation starts. And, you know, people will see the signs and that might draw them back to Jehovah, because they have, I think, a lot of people like my parents who just really believe it and really think that I'm going to come back someday because I'll come to my senses from their point of view. And they want to appeal to those people with not needlessly discouraging them with like cruel doctrines. But I don't know, at some point the door has to close. At some point your kid who left the organization is going to be destroyed by a fireball. And I'll be saying, obviously me, as the fireball is heading my way, I'll be going, too bad, too bad. And my father, who will be wearing full witness regalia, he'll have a name tag on, like a convention name tag that just says, your dad. And he'll be like, I'm glad, I guess. I mean, I'm doing a little paraphrasing, but that's what I got from this.
We will know if we were ready as Jehovah protects us when the nations turn their guns on us.
Yeah, holy shit.
Now
right?
is the time. As Jehovah protects us when the nations turn their guns on us.
I think they're going to be, you know, I think they're trying to move away from this kind of craziness. Because I don't know. You had Anthony Morris and Sam Hurd, two war veterans, who clearly were bringing their PTSD, and apparently, I think a certain amount of bloodlust. The way they talk about just drooling over the destruction of their enemies, learning how to fight. Yeah. I think that they want to move away from this. And it's interesting to me that they had Sam Hurd make this announcement about the service time change. I feel like it's almost a way of putting people in their place, like who give certain talks, like, this will mean more coming from you because you're the old timer who's famously kind of a field service Nazi. And if you make this announcement, that will signal to the rank and file that you're on board too. So I don't know. This whole language of the nations are going to turn their guns on us. That's the kind of world that Jehovah's Witnesses are living in. That's their headspace. And that's why they need a special manual for how to pretend to be a normal person so that they could trick people into being their friend and then try and convert them.
Now is the time for us to continue strengthening our faith and trust in Jehovah's love for us.
Thanks, Joe.
Study, meditate, associate, and preach the kingdom. Young David, when facing Goliath,
he makes the same point that they make in the annual meeting about like, oh, David, he was prepared because he brought 5 stones, even though he only needed 1. Weird. Only Jehovah's Witnesses would make that extrapolation. There's a little bit of chat, well-constructed sentence, about like, you know, preppers within the organization. And it's interesting, you know, like it really is not a bad idea to have just like emergency supplies. Like natural disasters do happen. It's smart. Like having a go bag is a good idea. I don't have one just because we're too lazy and poor to do it. But I don't know. I think that that's a tricky one. Like obviously when witnesses are doing it, they are doing it with the added thing of like, well, also this is going to come into play for the Great Tribulation. But I also think it's just like never a terrible idea to be like, oh, well, like if the power goes out, or if there was a storm and I've got this bag, it's got some extra water and batteries and a flashlight in it. Like, I don't know. This is all hypothetical for me because we have none of these things. But I think there's a difference between being a prepper and being a prepper. You know what I mean?
Had 5 smooth stones in his pouch.
5 golden
pouch
stones.
Of his shepherd's bag.
His shepherd.
He only used 1. But he was prepared in case he needed more.
It was a no-scope headshot.
When we read the Bible and meditate on it, our figurative heart absorbs God's word, like putting symbolic stones in our figurative heart.
No, I have to. We have to stop them from doing this. We must stop them. It can't be allowed to continue. You can't just read a passage from the Bible of like, Josiah's blood sacrifice was set upon the stone altar, and he split open the tiger's rib cage, and the ghost floated out and made God's nose happy. So if we want to serve Jehovah, we have to put our figurative tiger on the figurative stone altar and make our figurative ghosts. Like, they just do this. That's just a real example that I pulled from memory, but this like, it's so lazy. They'll just read a completely unrelated passage of the Bible and be like, well, now you have to have a spiritual tabernacle in your brain.
This gives us the inner strength we need to preach the kingdom message now and to proclaim the hard-hitting judgment message that we may deliver in the near future. The day for salvation will be closed any day now.
Okay. Two things. I want to address this prepper talk. That's our thing. So like here in Ohio, the biggest thing we have is tornadoes, honestly. And so that's part of the reason why we haven't been overly concerned. If we lived in a coastal town, I kind of probably would be a prepper. Like hurricanes are one of my biggest fears on earth. Just hasn't really, I haven't had to confront it as much. Spiders, one of my other big fears, but I have to confront that one on the regs. But yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to like have some extra bottles of water and canned goods and stuff. Now, okay, this is really important. Prepping for natural disasters, it's not important. Leave it in God's hands. That's the message of this channel. If you're rightly disposed for everlasting life, Jehovah will save you. But he is saying that any day now, the door to salvation will be closed. That is now different, thanks to the annual meeting.
In the hard-hitting judgment message now, and to proclaim the hard-hitting judgment message that we may deliver in the near future.
Big, all caps, may.
The day for salvation will be closed any day now.
Yeah. And now it's like, well, it's still any day now, but it's any day after the start of the Great Tribulation, which that's any day now. And then any day after that will be when the door to salvation closes. So they just keep kicking the can down the road, which you would think if we were really rapidly approaching the end of the world, you would be doing less of that. You would be reining in your cans because you would need them to survive in your post-apocalyptic society where cans are obviously incredibly valuable.
When Noah had gathered all the creatures that Jehovah had designated, along with all necessary food needed for all in the ark, they went into the ark. Note it was Jehovah that closed the door, not Noah.
Because it was too big and heavy.
16 says, so they went in, male and female of every sort of flesh, just as God had commanded him. After that, Jehovah shut
our
the
new
door
Speaker of the House here in the
him.
States
We don't take
thinks
it
this
upon
literally happened,
ourselves to close the door to salvation. Jehovah shuts the door, and we can't push it open to let mom or anyone else in.
Why did he single out his mom? Do you think this guy might have some mommy issues? To let mom or anyone else for that matter. End of list, end of examples. Mom, the rest.
You Gileadites are professional preachers and teachers.
Gileadites.
You have received training that not many of your brothers and sisters will have the privilege to receive this side of Armageddon.
See, back to flattery, back to the outer bread of the compliment sandwich he's been giving. Like, compliment, your light's so bright it can melt people's faces like the end of Raiders. Middle of the sandwich, the door to salvation is going to close any day now, and I need to be ready to maybe die or not. And then outer part of it, but really, you are super special because you got to go to this 5-month class, and you are now you are a professional teacher, I believe he said, and more educated than the rest of the witnesses.
Else in, and we can't push it open to let mom or anyone else in. You Gileadites are professional preachers and teachers.
Professional teachers.
You have received training that not many of your brothers and sisters will have the privilege to receive this side of Armageddon. Yes, without a doubt, you are wiser now than you used to be, but not as wise as Jesus was when he said,
"Oh,
what I
not as wise as Jesus." There is a cutoff, people.
In mind that what you teach belongs to Jehovah, and conduct yourselves in a manner that displays that. Let your light shine, not too bright, just a flicker as needed before night falls. Any day now.
He was patting himself on the back after he wrote that, I bet, but I don't know. I think that's kind of an uninspiring message. It just seems so anti the gospel. Let your light shine a little bit, just kind of a small, tiny amount, a flicker really before nighttime, because any day now, God's just going to shut the door to the ark anyway. So yeah, it's weird, and he was speaking very forcefully with a level of passion. He did a few characters and voices. It was almost like one of these streams here. And then, cut to a couple years later, this last annual meeting, the organization is preaching something that is completely at odds with this. It was not the light getting brighter. It was light contradicting the previous light. And I think that this is something, if you are like me and have witnessed friends and family members and trying to, think of ways to reach out to them with the few opportunities you might have to preach to them. Sorry, I've got bedhead. I'm trying to deal with weird scraggly hairs. Was it Jeffrey Winder? I think I conflated Winder and Flegel the whole time that I was reacting to the annual meeting, but he outlines how the governing body process works, how, they, something comes to their attention, they present it, their assistants prepare a research document, and then they just kind of talk about it and share their opinions and come to a group consensus. Well, okay, that spiritual process happened for Sam heard and the previous teaching they had that the ark door was closing at the start of the Great Tribulation. That whole process presumably all happened, but they came to the conclusion that the ark door closes at the start of the Great Tribulation and that the judgment message is kind of just like neener points. Like you're just saying it to kind of rub it in people's faces, but nobody's going to be able to join when you're preaching the judgment message. They did all that and preach it as truth. This is light. That was the light getting brighter. And now they are teaching something that is the exact opposite of that contradicts that. Those two ideas can't exist at the same time. But the fact that they have changed it is somehow supposed to increase their confidence in future teachings. There's no standard. And they've acknowledged that they're not going to go back and apologize for being wrong. So even though the new light contradicts the old light, and it's just as likely that the new thing they will later acknowledge it was equally wrong, you're supposed to believe this new thing even harder because they're acknowledging that the previous thing was kind of wrong and fake. Weird. I don't know what they're going for here. Well, folks, thank you for joining me on the stream. This is super fun. If you want to like and subscribe, that would be great. Those are free ways to help. If you just have, some kind of excess of funds and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with this money? Am I going to bury it? Am I going to burn it? Am I just going to start Jesse from Breaking Bad style, throwing it out of the window? You could direct a little bit of it towards Patreon. I'm doing monthly exclusive videos reacting to like JW comments or whatever little bullshit's on my mind. And also I'm going to do a video on funerals, and why they're bad. So if you want to read basically the next script, go to jwfaq.org and read that. But I'm also going to be in the video integrating some of your comments because I got a lot of really good comments on the post announcing that I was making this funeral video that I want to incorporate in the video version. People expressing their experiences going to witness funerals, both as a PME, as people who have left. And Mariah, who's in chat now, had a really good one that I think speaks to fears that I had, especially when I was a PMO, that like, what if I die while I'm PMO? My family doesn't know. And they give me this JW funeral that I fundamentally oppose, but I'm too afraid to tell them. Like all of this weird added stress around an already stressful situation. So thank you for hanging out. Kind of chill, low energy stream, but boy, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for helping me like wake up and pull myself out of recovering from party mode yesterday. And be well, do good work, and keep in touch. That was Garrison Keillor. That's something he used to say. So I can't steal that. To eat the rich.